One for sure. Oh, there's the other.
Yeah, it used to be no big deal. Like, oh, I remember the entire, the whole bio and everything. Now it's like, gosh, We're good? Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the ACEC City of Phoenix Liaison. We appreciate all of you guys in person as well as all of you online. And I think to get started, we've got quite a few people here in person, so let's start with some introductions.
Ron Pavika with Paramount.
Greg Froelich with EPS Group.
Brent Zacic with Sun.
Chintan Javeri, Trace Consulting.
Bill Peterson, Gannett Fleming.
Jason Simmers, Dibble Engineers.
Steve Jimenez, Stanley Consultants.
Bruce K, Nino and more.
Pete Hemingway, Augura.
Eric Froberg, City of Phoenix.
All right, so yeah, as you can tell, we've got a lot of people, and thank you for those taking a bite of food at the same time. That would have been me. So anyway, we appreciate you being here. We've got a great presentation today, Public Works, and I often say, and I said last time, the hardest working people, probably the most unsung heroes at the City of Phoenix. All the operations, all the things that keep the city going and rolling and moving is done by Public Works through their facilities, fleet management, the whole 9 yards. They take care of the city. So very unsung hero. You probably don't get a lot of thanks, I'm guessing, Joe. People don't walk into your office and go, the city's running well, thank you. They probably just say, hey, my water's not working, or the sink's not working here, So we appreciate all you do and appreciate you being here. So Joe has, Eric, I'm getting old. I got to write this stuff down now. I can't remember. So Joe's been with the city since 2006 in a number of different roles, primarily with water services and public works. He comes with a master's degree in public administration and a bachelor's in environmental science, both from ASU. And he's currently serving as the APWA Solid Waste Technical Committee. And before you were the director, you were solid waste specific at Public Works. So with that, I'm going to stop speaking and turn it over to Joe, who's going to give us a great update on Public Works. So thank you, Joe.
You bet. All right. Well, thank you for having me. Appreciate being here. I actually started with the city in 1999, so the first few years got erased. And I've been a few different organizations in the city. I worked in our water department, mostly in our public works department, and a little bit in our Office of Environmental Programs, based on my background as an environmental scientist. In terms of public works for the city of Phoenix, I think you guys all know this, the city of Phoenix being the 5th largest city in the United States, we have broken off what are traditionally public works functions into some different departments. So we have a streets department with the city engineer's office located within, that's managing a lot of our horizontal public works-y type things. A water, wastewater, stormwater utility, that's its own separate department as well. And yet our Public Works Department is still 1,100 employees strong, as is, and that is our solid waste utility, of which we do have post-collection assets, 2 transfer stations, composting facility, a resource innovation campus I can touch on a little bit, an active landfill, 5 closed landfills that we're managing. So we do have some quite a number of physical assets we're managing. And then we have facilities on behalf of the entire city. So that is, 1,300 something buildings that we're managing, and in addition to supporting other departments. So, aviation manages their own assets, convention center manages their own assets, and we, for the most part, are managing buildings on behalf of the remainder of the city. And then we take care of the city's entire fleet and fueling infrastructure as well. Somewhat unique for the of cities. I think we're one of only 2 cities in the country. We buy our fuel directly off the pipeline, either from California or Texas. And then we have storage capacity at the tank farm where we maintain, blend our own fuels. We have We're probably 73% of our fuel use is alternative fuels. The Valley of the Sun Clean Cities Coalition is one of the leaders in the nation. I talk about that because that's part of where we're headed from an infrastructure perspective that I think you would care about. So generally speaking, that's what we do. We did recently transition the flood control program from the Public Works Department under Eric. So, but there's quite a number of projects in flight in that program. So we worked closely with the county flood control district to secure, and we used some funding we received from the federal government to secure about, I think, 10 million of federal funds plus another 20 some odd million of county funds to execute a series of projects that I think are in progress, I think mostly in design right now. The other big thing, and I'm sure that you're aware of this, but the city for the first time since 2006 is working on developing a bond program. So the strategy this time around, the traditional approach has been, we go with a big bond ask to the voters, and then we hit the recession and things kind of got really screwy there. Now we're at the point where we've got debt coming off the books from the last bond program. The city has capacity to do an additional bond program without raising property taxes in any way, shape, or form, and wants to do bond programs on a regular routine basis, so we don't have these big kind of situations where we have a bond program and then we go a long period of time without, and we're kind of in this, feast and famine mode. So the strategy this time is about a $500 million bond program for a 5-year period, and then continuing in increments of $500 million bond programs. I could see that slowly shifting as, the dollar continues to inflate or devalue, however you want to put it. 500 million might be 550, 600. We'll see what it is 5 years down the road. But essentially the objective, I think, strategically is to have ongoing bond programs as a program is coming to an end, a new program is initiating, so that we can keep on. We are in a situation from a public works perspective, and I think this is somewhat generally accurate, although, aviation's been able to keep up, I think, pretty well. Streets was able to get some significant capital dollars through the tax, the transportation program, to do some investment in roadways, but in general, for general assets, buildings, fleet assets, flood control assets, things like that, without the bond program, we've been in a deferred maintenance scenario, deferred replacement scenario. We're doing a series of things on our facility side, for example, facility condition assessments. So some consulting firm maybe represented in the room here today is helping us evaluate our building condition and giving us reports so that we can say, okay, we've got, HVAC systems all over the place that are beyond replacement. We've got building automation systems that need to be changed out. We've got sewer lines in buildings that are failing, things like that. So we're in the midst of that, and that's all informing our bond program. So real quickly, for what Public Works is, I think, proposing right now to the bond committee, the process is there's a committee now that will make its recommendation to council, I think, in December. Council will then make a decision on that, and it would be going to the voters next year, I think in November. If the voters were to approve the program, then it would take effect thereafter. From the Public Works perspective, we've got in there a $15 million program for investment in HVAC and building automation systems throughout the city. We've got a $5 million program focused on energy efficiency and water efficiency improvements, like cooling towers, things like that. We've got a $10 million program to do building improvements at our city service centers, and another $10 million for our downtown buildings, so in total $20 million in building systems. What am I missing? We've got a $10 million program for ADA improvements throughout the city. And We've got some fuel tank replacements for fuel tanks that are outside, so that's about a $5 million project. I think I've hit the major ones. There's quite a bit of other programs that you would see. I'm listing out the ones for you that my department specifically prepared and submitted, but what I mentioned these facility condition assessments that we have done. So we have provided those to departments like the library department and the parks department and some of the others. And so the arts and cultures department. So they have also bond recommendations to do like ADA improvements or other facility improvements at facilities. So for example, arts and culture is taking care of some of their own facilities. They might have us come in and help, but they're responsible for the capital programs for those. So, so just a little bit about the bond program. Let me, I hope I'm hitting on the kinds of things you guys want to hear about. Let me take a moment to pivot and just talk about, I'm going to go through our various programs and kind of current state things we're working on. So for the solid waste utility, let me start there. We've got a major capital program right now replacing out our 27th Avenue recycling facility. We've already procured the equipment. We've procured design for the building. So what we did was we already demolished out the old equipment inside an existing building space. We're needing to renovate the building envelope to accommodate the installation of the new equipment. So that's a major project that's underway. At our landfill, we'll have ongoing capital projects always. It's design and construction and closure of new landfill cells as we go. Usually planned to be in about 2-year increments in an ideal state. We went some period of time from our last cell construction to where we are now, but ideally we're doing new cell construction projects typically within 2-year segments. I don't like to spend a whole bunch of money today that we really don't need that for 5 years. That's not exactly the wisest use of our dollars. So generally we try to do those in 2-year increments. We've got probably some water projects. We've got a gas to energy project out there that's being worked on with Amoresco. They may be subbing out some work there. That should begin construction soon. They got their air permits, so we're looking forward to that one. Some things coming in the future that I anticipate on the solid waste side. The city's passed this climate action plan. The climate action plan anticipates us reducing our impacts in a lot of different ways. From a solid waste perspective, it's eventually put your landfill out of business essentially and find other ways to manage your waste. So the big thing for that is going to be organics. And although we have a compost facility, there's really 2 options for organics, right? You can compost, but you can only compost so much. The market only needs so much compost. And then it's, okay, well, what do you do with these other organics? So I foresee anaerobic digestion. This may be co-digestion with the wastewater treatment plant, where you're basically digesting both, biosolids from the treatment plant as well as municipal solid waste solids. Again, I guess it could be either co-digestion or separate digestion, but I anticipate some potential projects along those lines in the next few years. And we're certainly evaluating those now. Transfer station work, floor repairs, building improvements, electrical system upgrades, things like that, just to keep up with the thing. But that's pretty much what I expect on the solid waste side for the time being. For our facilities capital improvement program, the bond program will be a big piece of that, and whether we secure the funding or how much funding we secure to be able to do those improvements. In the meantime, we've got about a $13 million a year pot that we're taking out of operating funds to do ongoing capital improvements. So especially focused on deferred maintenance. So over the last few years, it's been fire life safety has been an area where we had been falling behind on keeping up on our fire life safety systems, and so we've been doing a lot of investment there. We're generally getting caught up on that, and I'm seeing some investments in, maybe some building automation systems a little bit. We've got a big sewer line project going on in City Hall. We have a need to do that in our court building right next door. I think our Calvin Good facility might be okay for the time being, but there's an incredible need out there right now. I think our facility condition assessments for what we've done so far has an $80 million price tag on it in terms of deferred maintenance work that needs to be completed, either because it's past due or will be becoming due in the next 5 years. So the bond program doesn't quite catch all that, so we'll be doing some of that with deferred maintenance items. On the fleet side, we are going to be going through an incredible transition, as is every private and public organization, which is going to be moving from traditional petroleum-fueled, especially light-duty equipment, but even heavy-duty eventually, to a lot of electric, possibly hydrogen, but other cleaner technologies. And so that's going to be a major. I don't think people completely have wrapped their head around the major electrical capital. I was looking at some research that shows that, like, I don't know if it was fueling 10 or 25 transit buses, for example, is like powering the Empire State Building. So you're not talking about small power demand here. And then I think there's going to be completely shifting technology when it comes to these charging stations. I was just reading this morning before I came over here that smart AI technology might help chargers be able to recharge electric vehicles more quickly without damaging the battery. So a lot of the issue here is the battery, and the battery technology is what it is. It's still developing. You got to pay a lot more for more range. People don't want to pay a lot more for more range, or can't afford to pay a lot more for more range. Just getting it 1 second.
Nice. That's nice, Bruce. Very comforting.
There we go. All right. So I think there's going to be an incredible amount of investment so for us right now, what we're doing is we're securing a consultant to evaluate some of our major parking locations to identify what's our current capabilities, what would we need as we transition over the next 10 years. It's something in our climate action plan. Our initial plan will be focused on light duty cars and pickup trucks. And then eventually, we've already ordered an electric refuse truck to test, but I already know how that's going to go. We've been down this path before. These things are not well designed for the Arizona climate, and so we already tested out like a little mini loader. If you guys know our bulk trash program, we've got a tractor that goes out with our crew. We tested an electric tractor, and it lasted about 2 to 3 hours before it ran out of juice. So we are not surprised. The technology will get there. We just know it's not quite there yet. Transit just won an award, I think it was just announced yesterday or within the last few days, for a big grant to do some electric buses. So point is, there's going to be major investment over the coming years in electrification of fleets. What that also means is it'll be a lot of tank closures for those in that business. But I'm anticipating fewer and fewer tank replacements. Right now we have, I presume others are in the same boat, right? So 30 or so years ago is when, all the tank leaks were a real issue, UST programs were a real issue, and the requirement for leak detection, double-walled tanks, et cetera, was put in place. Those tanks are now, coming up on 30-plus years of life, 35 years of life, and starting to fail. One of the reasons we have a tank bond program is to just replace out the highest use of those tanks at our police stations. Police cars are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and constantly needing fuel. So those tanks and their dependability is critically important. But I anticipate kind of a big change there over the next several years in terms of, there'll be some tank replacements because at a necessity, but there'll be more of a transition towards investing in electrification. All right. I think I hit on most of the things I wanted to quickly, and I ran through it quickly to save time for any questions that you have. I will share with you from a national perspective, and just serving with APWA, and I not only serve on the Solid Waste Technical Committee, but there's an organization with APWA called Big Cities, Big Counties, and so, New York and LA and Phoenix and Houston, and some of us get together a couple of times a year, and we're talking through a lot of our, biggest issues. Right now, no surprise, it's hiring. And the challenges of recruiting both blue-collar workforce as well as professional engineers. That's one of the biggest challenges. But you've got the infrastructure bill that's out there. We're still trying to wait and see and fully understand what what we're going to be able to do with that funding. The state ADOT's submitted the plan for charging infrastructure statewide. So beyond what we're going to be doing from a charging infrastructure perspective at municipal levels, the state's going to got an entire charging infrastructure plan. They're getting a whole bunch of money from the federal government to install charging infrastructure throughout the city. Throughout the state of Arizona, and all states are getting that. So there's going to be major investments there. And then we've got this new Inflation Reduction Act, or whatever, name change they have at the last minute. And we're still trying to figure out all what's in there and what that's going to mean. The point is the federal government has punched a ton of money into the economy here, and most of it hasn't even hit yet. They're still writing their grant programs. They're still figuring out how to administer these. And we haven't even spent all the dollars from the American Rescue Plan Act at this point. So, right now times are really good at the city, and I think probably in most organizations in terms of having dollars to spend, which has driven up the cost of everything, of course. I don't know when those chickens come home to roost, but they will eventually. So that's kind of, just from a national perspective. We'll have to see after the elections what else transpires, but after the midterms. Okay, so questions. Did I hit on the kinds of topics you want me to hit on?
That's great. Yeah. Okay. No, we appreciate that.
I hope my moving around didn't freak out the people on the camera too much, but I don't like to stand still too well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've worked with some other cities of, starting to transition, their bus fleets and some of their other fleets to electric. And one challenge that's came into it is transitioning the personnel over. They're all set up, all their maintenance facilities are set up for diesel or CNG, and just getting all them, and quite honestly, the diesel mechanics aren't too excited to become an electric bus mechanic. Mm-hmm. What kind of things are in the program for that, and transitioning education over from fuel powered vehicles over to electrical powered vehicles?
Yeah, so great question. The question's about for the workforce related to electric vehicles, getting them prepared for the transition. We have a partnership we're developing. I think it's ITP. I'll have to remember exactly what it is, but it's an organization that's developed some training programs for technicians to work on electric vehicles, and also for electricians to be able to work on the EV charging infrastructure and get the proper training and certification for that. Those are important transitions for us. So for us, it's like I look at this as a twofold piece. There is all the infrastructure piece, right? So our underground storage tanks, our fueling dispensers, our fueling systems, that was one set of contractors and expertise. And we had a few technicians in-house and then contracted support to help us to do that. Now we're going to be transitioning to, it's all electrical power, high voltage stuff that we're going to need certified electricians who know how to work and are licensed to work on that type of equipment. That's on the charging infrastructure to replace the fueling infrastructure. And you're going to have this transitional period of a number of years where you have to have both capabilities in place. And then there's the actual technicians themselves that the transition for them working on electric vehicles and transitioning away from diesel. And again, we're going to have this period of time where you have to have expertise in both areas. And one of the real challenges, to your point, we're not seeing a lot of younger people, charging into the field of like auto mechanics, heavy diesel mechanics, and some of those other trades. From a Phoenix perspective, our strategy has been building out apprenticeship programs. So this year we doubled the size of our electrical apprenticeship program, and we're going to continue to grow that. We added a new program for HVAC technicians for apprentices just this year. We are building out a vehicle technician apprenticeship program, focused on heavy equipment mechanics right now. Eventually, I think auto mechanics. So our objective, or our strategy, is to try to go get people interested in this, and we'll train you rather than just trying to go find people who have years of experience doing this and having them join our organization. And so, to your point, the training is a critical investment need that we're pretty well focused on.
Just to add to that grant you mentioned, about $1 million of that they received was for that training. So it's definitely a focus of FTA as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Is Phoenix's ED program independent of ADOT's, or there's some overlap? Hard to tell.
I would characterize them as independent at this point. We are in discussions with them. We will identify opportunities. Theirs is very much about building a charging network across the state, and it's focused on interstate highways, and so to the extent that along the I-10 or the I-17 in Phoenix, there's some charging infrastructure that's going to be developed by the state that Phoenix could potentially partner with them on or contract to use. But most of our charging, if you think about electric vehicle charging, the way it's really structured to work is you do your work, you park your vehicle, you charge it over the evening hours, and the vehicle's ready for the next day. So in that case, it's mostly going to be done at your parking locations, and that's not going to work with the ADOT situation. So to the extent we need charging during the course of the duties of the day, and there's these charging stations out there that we could potentially partner with ADOT, that would be where I see some potential collaboration. But otherwise, the funds they're getting from the feds and the mission by which they're installing charging infrastructure is different than our mission. Now, there is a second part of our mission. I told you from I'm thinking from our fleet management perspective, but our EV plan does include a focus on the public as well. And so, although I won't be directly executing that more than likely, there'll be a lot of partnership with third parties on determining how we're going to handle that public access piece to charging infrastructure, and whether that's going to be some grant programs for people to help install charging infrastructure at the home, whether that's going to be public-private partnerships for retail charging stations. I don't know what that's going to look like yet, but that is definitely part of the future plan as well. Any other questions I can answer for anybody?
This is sort of off topic of the stuff you mentioned, but one of the big things in the news now is the potential water cuts in the Colorado and all of that. Is Phoenix engaged in that yet, or any perspective you can share?
Phoenix has been engaged. I mean, and Eric can probably, he served as our water director for, 6 or 9 months. And I worked in our water department, and we work closely together, so I don't want to completely answer for them, but Phoenix has been engaged in managing water resources my entire time with the city and well beyond that. Going back to banking water underground for future use. I think our mayor is quoted as talking about the fact that, hey, other states, it's time for you to step up. We at the city of Phoenix have already stepped up and said we're cutting consumption and keeping the water in Lake Mead. Where are the rest of you at? So we're very committed to that. Note that our water supply is both, I mean, we get, is it 40% from CAP? And then 60% more so from the SRP watersheds, the more local watersheds. Those watersheds are healthier than the CAP watershed. And then we have our groundwater supply that we've been banking, and now we're constructing capacity to be able to draw on that banked water supply should we need it, I think is kind of the safest way to say that, right? But the city of Phoenix has been working closely with the state of Arizona, the tribes, and the other states to address the Lake Mead water issues is the best way I can kind of answer that. And if you want more detail, Troy Hayes, our water director, is the better position to answer that.
And he'll be here next month too. So.
There you go. And he'll have a ton of capital projects to talk to you about. So
They have a big CIP. I have a question on the Rainbow Valley landfill. Is that, are you?
I'm familiar with it. That's a private landfill.
That's what I was wondering, if the city of Phoenix was involved in that at all, and what the, I worked on that quite a while ago from a flood control side, and I just wondered how, if that was, it had a timeline of closing, and I was wondering if they're on schedule for that, but if that's something.
I don't know. I had heard that Glenn was maybe selling his business, and I believe that's Weinberger, right? Glenn Weinberger owned assets. So, but I don't know. I haven't followed up on that rumor. Someone just whispered it to my ear, and so that's what I know about that.
I was interested too in the anaerobic digestion with landfill and organics through treatment. Do you have any plan for that now, or is that sort of a pie in the sky? And then do you think that could be carried through pipes?
Yeah.
Liquefied?
Yeah. So great question. I would say that we are, what stage? We're in the research stage. We've done some evaluation. We've gone and visited some locations in California that are doing that type of technology. We've probably got an RFI coming out in the pretty near term to get interest on that concept. So we're definitely developing. I don't know that I have a set aside capital program yet for that specific investment. Our solid waste utility is an enterprise utility, so we'll have to evaluate where our revenues are, what investments like that would do to our expenses, and can we afford that, things like that. But we're actively pursuing those options now, and there are some facilities. So there's a few ways of going about this.
a lot of, one of the strategies that you'll see that they've done in California, which I think is not the way we'll probably head, which is making the resident try to separate their organics. So you now, instead of having a garbage container and a recycling container, you've added now an organics container. And we already know, just by a matter, I'm one that believes very much in engineering controls are the best option, rather than trying to force behavior change. And if you can do it with engineering controls, it's usually more successful. So that approach is, you got to have a whole bunch more trucks now, you got to have a whole bunch more drivers, and you have to have a cooperative population that says, okay, this stuff goes in this container, this stuff goes in this container, and this stuff goes in this container. We have a hard enough time with that with our recycling program, and that's been around for many, many, many years. So the approach and strategy we're frankly taking is, there's technology that can mechanically separate that organics out of the waste stream. It's not cheap, but frankly, when you compare it against the cost of buying a bunch of trucks and having a bunch of drivers and those ongoing operating expenses, it probably is actually the more cost-effective solution. And yes, you can make that into like a cake or slurry, and perhaps be able to transport it by pipe. So, as I'm thinking about it, well, we've got our 27th Avenue transfer station, our 23rd Avenue wastewater treatment plant. They're pretty darn close. You could almost call them a campus, right? And wouldn't it be cool if we could just update some of the digestion capabilities at the existing facility and pipe that over and co-digest? But I don't know if that's going to pan out. That's a pipe dream right now. Pipe dream. We'll see. Okay, I think I probably have time for another question or two, and I have to run back for another meeting I've got at 9 o'clock.
All right, any other questions for Joe?
Judice, yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And I don't know how you handle questions from the...
No questions in the chat?
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Joe. We really appreciate it. Great presentation. And then before we get out of here, any announcements that we have? I imagine Eric has some, and potentially some roads and streets, which is only a month away.
So I do typically have
hold
the
on.
project lists. I don't need that. I do typically have the project list. All right, but I wanted to first thank Joe for coming. As Chuck mentioned, very unsung, kind of behind the scenes kind of operation, but they are the operation that keeps the city as a whole operation moving. So most of our facilities and fleets and all of those things don't function without Joe and his teams working on that. So thank you, Joe. I also want to thank Joe and his fleet crew for helping the city engineer's office be one of the first. We will be one of the first to get an EV. It only made sense that my environmental group within the city engineer's office should have been one of the first, so we work with them. So hasn't quite arrived yet, but we're working on it, so thank you for that. As far as project list, Candy Kowalski is online, and she will give you that information, and we will see you next week, or next month, sorry.
All right, Candy?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So we have a few projects coming out here in the next couple of weeks for the city of Phoenix. So first one is for the Water Services Department, the large diameter sewer rehabilitation grade 5, CA&I services only for that one. The aviation department at the Sky Harbor Airport is going to have the Terminal 4 baggage handling system upgrades design. We will also have the CMAR going out at the same time, but for this purpose, design services, street transportation will have 13 locations, positive offset design. And then we have 2 recruitments going out right now for soils and materials testing on calls, and for the environmental, natural, cultural NEPA on calls. And those are both due on September 2nd. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Candy. Appreciate it. Marigo, do we have any roads and streets? I know we talked about it last time.
We do. Justin is going to join us with the announcement. everybody. This is Justin. Thank you so much for joining us in person and online today. Amerigo and I are sometimes apart as much as it pains us, so that we can also check on sound quality and things like that. So I hope with some of our new tech upgrades and things like that, that you're enjoying your experience online. And I know it's really great to see everybody back in person. Very, very quickly, yes, Chuck is 100% right. Roads and Streets, 1 month away. And we also have, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, our fantastic 4 golf scholarship tournament. As you know, the money raised here goes back to students studying at the major universities here in Arizona that are pursuing careers in engineering. So we certainly want to make sure that they're supported in their studies, and so that they enter our workforce pipeline, and you guys are lucky enough to get to hire them. We will once again be at the La Paloma Country Club doing another great round of golf. So please be sure to register your foursome or purchase a sponsorship on our website. That is happening Wednesday, September 28th. And then, of course, we have Roads and Streets, everyday superheroes, just like you guys, happening on September 28th through September 30th at the El Conquistador. We do have a few sponsorships left, and we might even have 1 booth left, but Marigo may have already sold that. So if you are looking to sponsor, please jump on our website. Be sure to do that. If you have questions, be sure to ask us. If you have not registered yet, please do. And if you plan on staying, please get registered and get your room, because those are also going very quickly. So that is it for me. We look forward to seeing you at Roads and Streets at the end of September, and also hope you're going to come out and join us for a great day of golf. Have a great week, everybody.
Great. Thank you so much, Justin. Appreciate the update. But before you go to Roads and Streets, you need to come back here on September 20th for Troy Hayes and Water. Sir Brandy Kelso will be here. We put that in the week because you're not going to get a lot of water down at Roads and Streets, so let's have water right before you go to Roads and Streets. You can have a conversation with Troy about water. So again, thank you guys for coming. We appreciate everybody here and online, and look forward to seeing you in person again. Troy and Brandy will be here in person in September. So we'll see you next month. Thank you guys. September 20th.